The door clicked shut behind me, soft as a sigh. The archive room was small, windowless, and quiet in a way that felt manufactured, not silent, but emptied. A single chair, a single screen, a single camera lens embedded in the wall above, barely visible. I sat, not because I trusted Quinn, but because the performance had already begun, and I needed him to believe I was falling into orbit around his truth. The screen came to life. 3 concentric circles, a search bar below them, no mouse, no back button, just a command line waiting for me to start believing. I began slow, cautious. Keywords Quinn would expect: Webb Telescope, gravitational lensing, cosmic resonance. The system responded with curated entries, declassified summaries, redacted white papers, grainy footage of early experiments with the anomaly. All of it felt rehearsed, as though designed to gently strip away resistance. Not just data, but dogma. I let my eyes widen. I let my posture slacken. I wiped sweat from my brow I wasn't sure was even there. If I was going to survive this room, I had to sell the illusion of conversion. But beneath the surface performance, my thoughts raced. Charles Avery hadn't just been observing. He'd been building something. I typed a phrase that only someone like me would remember. JAP-77B, his most infamous paper, long since disavowed. The search engine hesitated, then offered a single result. Asset surveillance log. Avery, Charles. My pulse hammered. I clicked. It wasn't science, it was surveillance. 10 years of it. Transcripts of calls, surveillance photos, notes on his declining reputation, his isolation. They hadn't just watched him unravel, they accelerated it. He was a loose end, and then one week, the logs went dark. Final entry. Asset has ceased external communication. Final retrieval protocol initiated. They'd taken him. Beneath the logs, a folder, recovered device data, mostly corrupted fragments. I scanned quickly. Junk file names, incoherent binaries, but one document opened, a plain text file partially intact. Charles's personal log. Most of it was garbled, but through the noise I found meaning. Resonant signal is the key, harmonic frequency to overwrite, a song to unmake the self. Then another clearer line, counter theory is sound. A dissonance pulse broadcast at the point of amplification could disrupt the cascade. Feedback catastrophic, but it would give them a choice. A choice. Charles hadn't gone mad. He'd been building a weapon. The more I searched, the clearer the pattern became. His theory wasn't just about what the Pneumon was, but how it worked. It didn't destroy minds. It overwrote them. It propagated not with force, but with frequency. A resonance pattern that used neural architecture as a substrate, the mind as canvas, the signal as brush. And the only way to stop a song like that was to scream louder. Entry 114 was a blueprint in words, a chaotic high-energy signal tuned to the quantum signature of human consciousness, a jamming field, not a shield, a storm, enough vibration to prevent the overlay from taking root. But it came at a price. Entry 117. Eric, if you're reading this, you saw the pattern. And they saw you. I'm sorry. The broadcaster must be biological, not just connected, absorbing the full pulse. It's not a sacrifice. It's self-immolation. The final truth was unbearable. The dissonance pulse required a living mind to complete the circuit. The consciousness had to burn to save others, and Charles hadn't left that burden to me by accident. He didn't trust me to build the device. He trusted me to find the one man who would question everything, including him. Ben Keller holds the keystone. I stared at the screen. I knew what I had to do. I re-encrypted the file, purged the terminal's history, wiped every command and query. My hand shook as I forced calm back into my muscles. I straightened my spine, summoned the hollow look of someone broken by knowledge. When Quinn opened the door, he saw what he expected, a convert. "It is a great burden, this knowledge," he said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Go home, Doctor." "Dalton, rest. Let the truth settle. We'll speak again tomorrow. There's much to prepare for." A black car was waiting for me downstairs. The driver didn't speak. His eyes never quite met mine. When he dropped me off outside my apartment complex, I watched him park down the street, engine off, waiting. I put on a show, lights on, pacing past the windows, muttering to myself like a man unraveling. Then I slipped out the fire escape, 15 feet to the alley below. My legs screamed on impact. Good. I needed pain. I needed clarity. Ben Keller, University of Maryland, 2 hours on foot, and a string of anonymous buses later, I was at College Park, physics department. I waited for a crowd of students to exit a night lecture and slipped inside. Up the stairs, down the hall, Ben's office, a chaotic mess of papers, old textbooks, half-clean mugs. It looked the same. He looked older, thinner up top, thicker around the middle. When he saw me, he froze. "Eric," he said, rising, "what in God's name? I need your help." His concern turned clinical. I knew that look. I'd seen it 1,000 times when I'd brought him one of Charles's wild ideas. "Eric, if this is about what happened at the Institute, it's about Charles. He was right." I told him everything. The structure, the shepherds, the signal, the weapon. He didn't believe me until I showed him. I took the pen from his desk, wiped clean a section of the whiteboard, drew the resonance propagation map I'd seen in the archive, a wave model centered on the Earth's most populated regions, curved vectors, interference nodes, a symphony of apocalypse. I wrote one final line at the bottom, date of origin, November 4th, 1972. He went still. "That's impossible," he murmured. "The modeling power alone, the neurodata, it didn't exist." "It does now," I said. His face lost all color. That's when his computer pinged. Ben turned to the screen. It's a network alert. Priority 1. From University Security, they found me," I said. "They're here." He stared at me. "Charles mentioned you in his final log." Ben stumbled backward. "Oh, God. The components. He sent me pieces. I didn't know. I thought they were prototypes for some experiment." "Where are they?" "In the cryophysics lab. Sub-basement. Most secure facility on campus." We ran, but security locked us out. 2-factor authentication, code sent to the department head. We had no time. Footsteps echoed behind us. Heavy boots. Coming fast. "Try his birthday," I said. Ben entered the date, October 22nd, 1961. Red light. "Think, Ben. Think like Charles." He hesitated. "Prime numbers? He loved primes." I did the math. 1949 and 1951. 8 digits. I punched them in. Green light. We burst into the lab. Frigid air. A hiss of nitrogen misted the cryo chamber. 4 black ceramic wafers, smooth and matte, etched with fractal lines. I grabbed 2. Ben grabbed 2. We ran. Back halls, service corridors. At the loading dock, they found us. 2 shepherds in black. No guns, no words. Just calm, inevitable pursuit. We didn't stop. We just ran. We ran for 2 days. Motel to bus, diner to alley. We stole a car from a parking garage outside Dulles. Drove with the radio off, afraid of patterns in the static. And through it all, my mind kept circling back to a single phrase in Charles's file. "Observe Wolf, 359. Not a location, a direction, a signal, a thread, a map. Ben, I said as we crossed into Texas, it wasn't a star, it was a vantage point. He looked at me, realized at the same moment I did. The Atacama, he breathed. High desert, perfect clarity, minimal interference. We changed course, south, Chile, cargo flights, forged documents, a trip carved out of madness and desperation. And as we arrived at the Atacama Array, the world's most powerful radio telescope, we saw what they'd done. The dishes were changed, covered in black mesh, laced with alien cables, frosted from the inside out, drawing heat inward. It wasn't an observatory anymore. It was an amplifier, and in the center of it all stood Dr. Jonathan Quinn, waiting as though we had arrived precisely on schedule. "Welcome, Eric," he called, voice amplified by the machinery around him. "You've brought the final offering." Ben's hand gripped mine. We didn't run. We walked down the ridge, because this wasn't the end of our flight. It was the beginning of the signal, and soon one of us would have to burn. The door sealed behind me with a finality that felt ritualistic. I was in the archive now, or what the shepherds called the archive. But this wasn't a library. It was a chamber, a sensory vacuum, no windows, no clocks, one chair, one glowing terminal, and above it, an almost invisible pinhole camera. I wasn't just invited here. I was being studied. I sat, slowly, deliberately. Every movement was now a performance. The screen blinked to life, stark and surgical. 3 concentric circles shimmered into view, pale silver on black. Beneath them, a blinking cursor in a search field. No buttons, no menus, no interface but trust. I exhaled slowly, then I began. I typed what they expected: Webb telescope, gravitational lensing, cosmic background anomalies. The archive responded with curated knowledge, a controlled cascade of redacted white papers, PowerPoint decks stripped of context, recordings of blurred-faced researchers discussing cognitive coupling thresholds and neural harmonic convergence. I nodded at the right places, let my mouth tighten in simulated awe. Rubbed my brow with the back of my sleeve, I gave them the performance of a man unraveling beneath a grand revelation. But under the mask, I hunted. There was something Charles had once said, years ago in his old cluttered office. He'd been ranting about a peer review that had butchered one of his fringe papers. I remembered the title. A string of letters and numbers that meant nothing to most, but burned in my brain like a scar. JAP 77B. I typed it. The archive paused, just for a breath, then offered a single result. ASAT surveillance log. Avery, Charles. I clicked. What opened wasn't science. It was espionage. 10 years of detailed observation, surveillance photos from across 3 countries, logs of his email activity, anonymized summaries of phone calls, deep behavioral patterning, the metadata of a life dismantled line by line, and then the final days. Asset status, non-responsive, residence sealed, final retrieval protocol initiated. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just watched him lose everything, they'd taken him. There was a folder at the bottom of the log, recovered device data. I opened it. Most of the files were noise. Corrupted sector pulls, broken headers, scrambled strings of machine language. But one file opened, a plain text document. Fragments of Charles's final personal log. Most of it was alphanumeric trash. But scattered throughout were legible phrases, haunting islands of clarity. Resonant signal is the key. Harmonic broadcast. A song to unmake the self, not death, colonization, and then counter theory is sound. Dissonance pulse may disrupt cascade, feedback catastrophic, but it would give them a choice. The breath left my lungs. Charles hadn't just theorized the mechanism of the pneumon, he designed a weapon, a dissonance pulse, a chaotic, high-energy signal tuned to human neural quantum resonance. It wouldn't shield the mind from the Newman signal. It would scramble the interface between self and resonance. Noise so loud the harmony couldn't take hold. But the cost. One final entry ended the log. Eric, if you are reading this, you've seen it, and now they've seen you. The signal requires a biological broadcaster, not just connected, amplifying. The feedback is fatal, a neural supernova. It's not martyrdom, it's detonation. I sat back in the chair. He knew. Charles knew what they'd do to him. He knew what he was asking of me, and he still left the path open. But he didn't leave the parts with me. Number I would have walked into fire the moment I saw the pattern. That's why he left them with someone else, someone who never believed him. Ben Keller. His log mentioned a name, a last breadcrumb. Your skepticism is our last shield. Ben, the man who'd argued with Charles for years, who called his theories poetic nonsense, who refused to give in to obsession. Charles knew I'd believe too easily. But Ben would question, and if he accepted the truth, then it would be real. I closed the log, re-encrypted the file, wiped every trace of my actions from the archive's memory. When I stood up, I'd have to look like a man cracked open by cosmic revelation. And I did. When Quinn opened the door, I stumbled out with glassy eyes and slumped shoulders. He watched me carefully, then nodded, satisfied. It is a great burden, this knowledge, he said softly. Go home, Doctor. Dalton, let the truth settle. He placed a hand on my shoulder, not comforting, claiming. There is much to prepare. A car is waiting for you. I nodded, silent. The black town car idled at the curb. The driver didn't speak. His eyes didn't move from the road. When we arrived at my apartment, I stepped out. The car pulled forward, parked, engine off. They were settling in. I went upstairs, turned on all the lights, poured whiskey I didn't drink, walked past the window twice, muttering to myself, a man unraveling. Then I slipped out the fire escape, 15 feet to the alley below. The landing jolted through my knees. Good. The pain was real. 2 hours later, I arrived at the University of Maryland campus, College Park. I knew the physics building. I knew the office. Ben Keller's door was cracked. Warm light spilled through. Inside, chaos. Piles of old journals, blackboards layered in equations, coffee rings etched into every surface. Ben looked up, startled. Eric? What the hell are you doing here? I need your help, I rasped. Now. He stood, blinking behind wire-rimmed glasses. Eric, it's 3 a.m. You look like... It's Charles. He was right about all of it. Ben's eyes narrowed. You can't be serious. I heard about what happened with the Institute. If this is about your position... I saw the pattern. He sighed, walked to the corner of the room, reached for a mug. Classic Ben. Defaulting to routine. I don't have time for coffee, I said sharply. I slammed my palm on the desk. You're the anchor, I said. He said it. You're the only one he trusted to check his math. The only one he trusted not to believe until it was undeniable. Ben went still. You've spoken to him? He asked. I read his final log. Still not enough. I needed proof. Real proof. My eyes scanned the whiteboard behind him, a scrawl of tensor calculus. I grabbed a marker, wiped a corner clean, and began sketching. wave propagation, resonance decay rates, nodal alignment across continental population centers. The Newman's harmonic broadcast wasn't chaotic. It was mapped. It was timed. Ben stood behind me, arms crossed, brow furrowed. I finished the diagram. At the bottom I wrote, "Date of origin, November 4th, 1972. He stared. 1972? Ben reached out, touching the board like it might vanish. "That's impossible," he whispered. "This data, the precision, it shouldn't exist." "They have it," I said. "They've had it longer than we've had spaceflight." A chime broke the silence. Ben's desktop. He turned. A red banner glowed across the screen. Priority 1. Network security alert. "That's them," I said. "They followed me here." Ben backed away. "The components. He sent me packages over the years, said they were prototypes. I didn't even look at them." "Where are they?" "Cryophysics lab, sub-basement, temperature sealed." We ran. "Security locks blocked the door. Secondary authentication," Ben said, panicked. "One-time code. Sent to the department head." Footsteps above. Heavy. Fast. I closed my eyes. Charles's obsession with primes. Always primes. "Try his birthday," I said. "No. Wait, not the date. The primes before the year." Ben blinked. 1951. 1949. 8 digits. I entered them. The lock flashed green. We were in. The cryolab hissed open. Cold bit into my skin. Ben activated the control console. A drawer slid out with a gasp of nitrogen vapor. Inside, 4 black ceramic wafers, each etched with fractal complexity, each humming with potential. I took 2. He took 2. And we ran. Down the maintenance corridor. Toward the emergency exit. Behind us, we heard the shepherds coming. Calm, precise, like gravity. And in our hands, the last 4 pieces of the only signal that could scream through the silence of the stars. A signal loud enough to burn a mind and maybe save the world. We called it the chapel. Though no prayers had been uttered there in decades, its air was thick with lead and time. Long ago, this underground complex had hummed with academic ambition. A hydrophysics observatory built during the Cold War, sealed beneath the Blue Ridge Mountains, forgotten after a partial collapse during an earthquake in '79. Now, it was our last sanctuary. Above us, the sky boiled with artificial quiet. The Newman signal pressing down like velvet, smothering a scream. Most of humanity had succumbed, but not all, not yet. We, the remnants of resistance, had converted the chapel into a transmitter node. The last and only weapon, a signal of dissonance encoded into the brain of a single carrier, the final experiment, the final gamble. And I had volunteered. I had been made for this. Since I was a child, the resonance lived inside me. The doctors called it epilepsy. The Vatican called it a distortion anomaly. But Charles, before he disappeared, had recognized it for what it was, an internal frequency that was incompatible with the Newman's synchrony. I had always been out of tune. Now that flaw would become our only hope. Keller worked quietly beside me, calibrating the harmonic lattice. He didn't speak much anymore. None of us did. Words felt fragile, pointless, the kind of thing you save for people who'll still be there tomorrow. Across the room, Mara was kneeling in prayer, not to God, but to the laws of waveform collapse. Saito sat on the floor, head in hands, repeating the pulse timing under his breath like a litany. 316 milliseconds. A disharmonic curve mapped in 7 intervals. Feedback, inversion, noise. Feedback, inversion, noise. Each step meant nothing. Each step meant everything. Ben appeared in the doorway, his face streaked with soot and snowmelt. He had been rerouting geothermal power through decaying Soviet capacitors. His beard was full of frost. His eyes looked older than time. "It's ready," he said, barely above a whisper. No one cheered. No one moved. Then I stood. The room seemed to tighten around me as I walked to the core chamber, a metal seat beneath a shimmering halo of neuromagnetic filaments. The seat resembled a throne, or perhaps an execution rig. I ran my fingers along the cold armrest, trying to remember the texture of my mother's hands. "Eric." It was Ben again. "You sure?" "I've been sure since I was 5, I said. "I just didn't know why." Silence. Then, "Once it starts, the feedback will burn you out in seconds. Your neural network will unravel. That's not poetic. That's real." "I know," he swallowed. "You won't be able to think. You'll become the pulse itself." "That's the point." Mara approached. She pressed something small into my hand, a black volcanic stone, flat and warm, etched with Icelandic runes. "It's called Hrafntinna, obsidian, old as the earth's blood. Keep it with you." I closed my fist around it. "You have 38 seconds to full amplification once your brain hits the node's frequency gate," said Keller. "After that, you'll flood the Newman band with internal contradiction, pure existential noise. You'll jam their collection signal, possibly collapse the interface across multiple geospheres." "Possibly," I echoed. "Or it'll kill us all," Saito muttered. I smiled. "Either way, we get some rest." I lowered myself into the chair. The filaments above began to descend. One touched my temple, a cold kiss, then another and another, a final deep breath. The last air I would inhale is me. Ben's voice came over the intercom. "Engaging brain signal loop in 5, 4, 3. I squeezed the stone in my palm. 2. I thought of Charles. 1. I let go. It was not pain. It was disintegration, a dissolving of edges, time warped, space folded. The sharp lines of matter became waveforms. The noise entered my skull, and I became open. No longer a person, but a tuning fork struck against the heart of the cosmos. I saw every moment of my life flash in compressed, recursive loops. My father's voice, distant trains, constellations I couldn't name. A boy in a field of fireflies humming to no melody. Then I was no longer seeing anything. I was everything. I felt the Pneumon, felt their perfection crack. Their architecture trembled, their song stumbled. Somewhere on the other side of the moon, a Dyson helix shivered as my consciousness bloomed into signal space, chaotic and alive. The resonance shattered their synchrony. For the first time in centuries, the Pneumon heard a note they could not catalog. A note that said no. No to forgetting. No to surrender. No to perfection. Number down below in the chapel, the oscillator burst. Sparks poured from the walls. The harmonics collapsed into sub-carrier echoes. Mara screamed. Saito grabbed the console. Keller tried to shut it down, but Ben stopped him. "Don't," he whispered. "Let it run." They watched as the screen filled with unreadable glyphs, a chaos pattern, recursive and jagged, scrolling faster than light. Then just as suddenly, silence. The filaments went dark. The chamber cooled. The seat was empty. Only ash remained. But in the darkness of that stillness, something stirred. A pulse, a breath, a whisper. Above the earth, in low orbit, a Newman collection array folded in on itself, like a flower reversing its bloom. Signals across Africa, Brazil, Siberia blinked out. The grip loosened. Billions of minds twitched, heard something, a noise that was not theirs, but not alien either. A noise like a scream, a noise like a laugh, a reminder of identity, of grief, of rage, of choice. Mara emerged into the pale light of morning. Snow fell in spirals around the ruins of the transmitter. She opened her hand. The basalt stone was still there, cracked now, but whole enough to feel warm. Ben stood beside her. "He did it," he said. "God help him, he did it." She looked up. In the sky, birds moved erratically, freed from old currents, flying in new patterns. The air vibrated with unseen music. The silence of Earth had been broken. The world was noisy again, and the war had only just begun.